Assalamualaikum. Hai, salam sejahtera. Welcome to Kita Family Podcast. Pada hari ini, kita sudah masuk ke episod 5. Kita Family adalah sebuah podcast gandingan 5 orang ibu. Di sini untuk membincangkan perihal yang menghargai hidup bermasyarakat, menghargai kepelbagaian, hidup secara inklusif sebagai rakyat Malaysia. So today, we are going to talk about the topic of getting the news. So acceptance, mendapat berita atau diagnosis. Buat kali pertama, kita mendengar tentang anak atau ahli keluarga kita adalah seorang neurodivergent. So mungkin ini terjadi kalau ibu bapa biasanya berjumpa dengan doktor atau medical professional yang lain yang telah membuat assessment dan memberitahu kita bahawa mungkin anak kita mempunyai autism ataupun Down syndrome dan pelbagai lagi yang boleh kita kategorikan di bawah neurodivergent iaitu seseorang yang mempunyai condition di mana dia tidak sama dengan kanak-kanak atau orang-orang yang biasa. Dan kalau kita tengok dari segi istilah seperti episod kita yang lepas dan bermacam istilah lah yang boleh digunakan, sama ada kita dengar perkataan permasalahan, kecelaruan, disorder, things like this. You will hear different things upon receiving this news. Ataupun sungguh pun kita mungkin mendengar buat kali pertama, satu perkataan je pun, this is big news. So pada hari ini kita nak membincangkan apa yang telah berlaku mungkin pada kita semua secara peribadi. Bersama-sama dengan saya pada hari ini, di sebelah kanan saya Anit.
Hai.
Dan Desiree ada juga di studio.
Hello.
Dari Kota Kinabalu, Sabah. Hai Didi.
Hai.
Malangnya hari ini SK tidak dapat bersama-sama dengan kami. So berempatlah kita untuk membincangkan topik berkenaan dengan penerimaan kalau kita tengok secara umum. So I think maybe I can start first with our experience. Saya mempunyai 3 orang anak yang kedua lah, Timur. Dia adalah anak autism. So his diagnosis was ASD. He's autistic. Kita sekarang ni dah lebih dari 10 tahun mengharungi perjalanan sebagai keluarga yang mempunyai seorang neurodivergent. Timo is now 15 and the diagnosis was when he was 3. Macam mana kita boleh sampai kepada tahap mendapat diagnosis tu? Well, pada umur 2 tahun lebih, dia telah menunjukkan antara macam perangai dan ciri-ciri yang tidak biasa. So bila kita tengok dia rasa macam kenapa dia ni lain sikit? Sebab saya dah ada seorang anak. So ni anak yang kedua. So adalah basis for comparison kan. Kita akan buat perbandingan sedikit dengan tak sengaja pun. But because you already have one child, you're looking at this other child. Kalau nak tengok dari segi dia punya milestone, pencapaian dia, perkembangan sebagai seorang bayi hingga menjadi anak kecil dan sebagainya, kita tak ada mempunyai apa-apa masalah yang ketara buat masa tu. But around 2 plus lah. Dia dah mula seperti suka mendiamkan diri. Dia tak suka berinteraksi sangat. Dia tidak pandang. Dia tak boleh pandang direct. Like no eye contact. Ada beberapa kali kadang-kadang macam kalau kita panggil nama dia pun macam dia tak jawab. Walhal saya tahu dia tak ada apa-apa masalah pendengaran. So because it looked like it was very selective, right? Kadang-kadang macam dengar, kadang-kadang macam tak dengar. So at this point in time, rasa about 2.5 tu, dia telah mula pergi kepada satu macam it was like a little reading center lah. Tapi reading center ni daripada di sebuah rumah. Mother and daughter team, kedua-duanya adalah guru. The mother is actually retired teacher, so dia pun macam nak mengajar anak-anak kecil, a little bit like nak kata tuition pun tidak, tapi macam mereka berdua, mother and daughter ni, untuk membantu anak-anak belajar membaca or basic literacy. So they were looking of course at language, but also both English, BM and numbers, so basic literacy for children. Tempat ni saya kenal sebab abang saya memang hantar anak-anak 4 orang semua ke situ, so kita pun dah kenal lah tempat ni kat situ. So Timo had started going there. Sebelum tu Jibril pun ada pergi. Around that time I was thinking, I think memang dah jelas lah bagi sesiapa yang mengenali Timo that he was going to be different. So they called me and they said, can we have a chat with you? Kita nak ceritakan sedikit lah, kita ada nak membincangkan sikit tentang Timo. So then they said, so for them, they said Timo is different. Dia tak menggunakan apa-apa label, tidak menggunakan apa-apa perkataan yang menggambarkan atau memberi any kind of description, nothing official. And then dia kata pendirian mereka, satu, kerana they're not qualified to do it, and secondly dia kata bagi kita anak ni anak, dan kita akan tengok kepada apakah secara khususnya yang diperlukan oleh setiap anak. Kita tak ada nak bagi label, kita tak ada nak kata okay dia macam ni macam tu. But I said that it is our responsibility also, okay, kita ni sebagai cikgu nak bagi tahulah he is different, because at the center apparently dia kerap cemas. Kadang-kadang dia ada menangis ataupun seolah-olah dia pun tak mendengar lah bila orang nak panggil, dia pun tak berapa pandang, dia nak buat benda-benda dia sendiri. Tapi at that time, interestingly, sungguh pun cuma baru umur 2 tahun, dia dah boleh baca. So of course later we found out that it is hyperlexia. Hyperlexia adalah sebuah condition, this kind of condition where you have a particular very strong interest, almost an obsession in letters. And so because you are so interested in all the huruf-huruf, segala jenis huruf dalam apa-apa bahasa pun, and you become very, very good at it. So because of this sort of obsession, he's very, very interested in letters and words. But I have to say, tak semestinya dia faham apakah maksud semua ni. But he can decode lah. Dia tahu bunyi-bunyi A, B, C, D dan sebagainya. Dan because he knows the sounds, he can connect and do all the words, and he loves letters dalam apa jua bentuk pun. Cara dia nak menulis everything, kalau tengok dia so halus. It's like almost perfect, but that's because of the hyperlexia, right? We didn't know, like wow, how come? And I am not like a flashcard a parent, but even around the time when he started going to these 2 teachers, he already had his alphabets. He already had the beginning reading. So I thought, okay lah, maybe he's ready for something. So kita hantar dia kepada tempat macam tu. I think somehow dalam naluri kita rasa belum sedia kot nak pergi tadika. Maybe at that time, even when he wasn't displaying a lot of those things very strongly, we still felt that a smaller place might be better. And memang, well, actually, alhamdulillah lah, it was in that case, because it did turn out to be better as we saw his behaviors. So around the same time I was thinking about it, then they mentioned it, and I remember I was talking to my sister-in-law, tengah cerita dengan kakak ipar, sebab dalam keluarga kami kita dah ada seorang anak neurodivergent. So tak asik lah bagi kita. So anak saudara saya seorangnya syndrome Down. So she has Down syndrome. So in the family, to have somebody who's neurodivergent was not unusual for us, right? So it was, but I knew this time it was not that, because with Down syndrome, it is related to the chromosomes. It's something you can diagnose at birth. Autism ni lain pula. Kadang-kadang kita kena menunggu untuk beberapa jangka masa tertentu, dan kita akan dengar 2 senario yang berbeza. Ada orang akan menyebut bahawa daripada anak dia, bayi yang kecil, dari sejak lahir boleh nampak kesian anak ni memang tidak seperti anak yang lain. Tapi ada pula, which is like for our family and for Timo, the first few months, 1 year, 2 years, seolah-olah semua macam biasa. And then baru kita nampak ada benda-benda yang berubah. So all these things happened at about the same time, and that was the first time in my mind the A word came. Not to say I know a lot about the A word, and the A word is autism. A is for autism. But somehow I kind of thought about it. So I was like, could this be it? But I had a chat. We called our pediatrician. We had a chat about it. And to be fair, he's not a developmental pediatrician. Pasti dia kata, baru umur 2 tahun. Maybe we can wait a little bit. Let's see. Why don't we make some changes? Give him some a little bit more attention. Kita tengoklah. Then kita fikirkan pula, adakah dia terlalu banyak bermain dengan iPad? Dan benda-benda macam itulah. We started thinking about what could it be? What could it be? But 6 months after that, it was very clear that he was definitely very different. And I said, and at his birthday, sebab birthday dia, tarikh lahir dia pada hujung tahun. So dia dah menjadi umur 3 tahun, and then there was a birthday party. Masa dekat sambutan hari jadi ni lah, jelas sekali sebab ada a lot of other kids around. He was so different. So I said, okay, help. We need some help. So we managed to get an appointment with a developmental pediatrician, and then we decided to also start seeing a speech therapist. Untuk berjumpa dengan speech therapist ni, tak perlu diagnosis apa-apa sebab dah jelas that cara dia bercakap memang tidak sama dengan kanak-kanak yang sebaya dengan dia. So we went, and actually the first person who said officially that word autism was our speech therapist. So dia kata, sebenarnya saya tidak boleh memberi diagnosis. Ini bukan di bawah bidang kerja saya. Tetapi sebab majoriti kanak-kanak yang datang untuk speech therapy bersama-sama dengan saya adalah anak-anak autism. Jadi saya dah begitu mengenali ciri-ciri autism. So dia kata, saya minta maaf. I want to tell you so that you take this seriously. And kalau belum buat appointment, belum ada perancangan apa-apa untuk mendapatkan diagnosis yang sebenarnya untuk bantu anak, you have to do it. And dia kata, you might be angry with me, you might be upset, but I have to tell you. I'm willing to tell you, and that you will be, I don't know how you will feel, but I am your child's therapist, so I'm going to speak for him. He said, I hope I'm wrong. He says, I don't think I'm wrong. But at that point, kita pun dah mungkin agak something is going on, right? So we had already got the appointment. And of course, after that, we got the whole appointment, and getting a diagnosis is a difficult process juga, ya. Memakan masa, mengisi borang yang berbuku-buku sudah banyak sangat. Sebab doktor atau mana-mana sesiapa yang akan memberi diagnosis tu memerlukan banyak maklumat, and then dia tak dapat observe anak kita kat rumah. So kita lah yang kena ceritakan apakah anak kita kat rumah, bagaimana. So dia akan soalan-soalan yang keluar ni sangat terperinci. So that's why it's pages and pages of things you have to fill out. So yes, it all happened, and then finally, yes, we did get this diagnosis. So what was the response from us? So I think maybe because for me, perkataan yang A word tu dah terlintas pada fikiran, I think I don't know, at that time maybe not so shocked. Or maybe shocked tapi tak realise shocked ke tak shocked, but tak terkejut ke tak apa, tengah fikirkan apa. But it was almost immediately, it was like action mode. That's how we responded. There was no denial. There was no, are you sure? It was dah jelas. Terang lagi bersuluh sebenarnya bahawa anak saya bukan seperti anak-anak yang lain. So in that sense, we didn't have that sort of denial process. It was just, wow, okay, all right, so what do we do? And our family is generally a very action-oriented type. So of course, we got into gear lah, and we got into action. Now, because we already have another beautiful neurodivergent child, and I suppose, Alhamdulillah, in a way, we are very lucky. Our family terdedah, exposed. We understand this a little bit. Dari segi penerimaan tu, dalam keluarga saya, sebelah saya tak ada masalah yang besar. But I think, I suppose what I want to say is, we got into action mode so quickly sebab therapy, intervention, how can we help him? Let's help him more, let's do this, let's do that. I didn't process this big feeling about the news, So sungguh pun keluarga kami bukanlah keluarga yang mempunyai persepsi atau stigma yang negatif tentang orang-orang yang OKU atau neurodivergent. It is still unexpected news, kan? It is still something yang kita tak duga. So, and berita yang besar sebenarnya. Dan sepatutnya ini adalah something yang kita semua, especially sebagai seorang ibu, kita harus proses. But I didn't process at that time. As a mother, I started to get into action mode. So my processing came later. And that was almost like macam a shock and getting the diagnosis all over again. So something happened. I think I was having a chat with one of the therapists. Tanyalah pada therapist. So, kalau kita sambung dan kita buat terapi macam ni untuk beberapa kali seminggu, untuk beberapa bulan, bila ya saya boleh nampak dia improve sampai satu tahap di mana, benda-benda ni tak jadi masalah bagi saya. Tahu secara teknikal, at that point in time I have read autism ni sepatutnya satu, keadaan di mana, cabaran-cabaran, ciri-ciri, everything is supposed to be sepanjang hayat. Tapi tak tahu macam mana benda tu tak land lagi. I didn't land properly. I didn't get it. I don't know if I didn't get it or I thought therapy can manage the thing. So even though still autistic, dia boleh lah. Dia boleh, buat apa seperti orang yang lain. So then the therapist, I think dia pun macam dengan muka dia yang nampak lah very, kesiannya this mother, how do I tell her? So she was like, he will always be autistic. He will maybe always be like this. Therapy ni is to help manage him, menguruskan. But kita tak boleh nak kata kalau lepas kita dah buat sebanyak terapi ni untuk jangka masa begini, dia akan okay. So that somehow hit me, and then I think was really, really the first time I cried and just was suddenly sort of in shock and everything, all of that, just to feel everything, right? So I guess what I wanted to share from this very long sharing, thank you so much for indulging me, is that you have to feel those feelings at some point. I think it is still news yang you tak expect. You didn't think it was going to happen. And it's not the same as, this is terrible, or this is something that where it's not that, but it is a shock. It is something that was not planned. So you will have those feelings of shock and fear and worry and some sadness. And I think you need to process all of that, but also, to be balanced out with the fact that you need to do something for your child. So of course we had, and we did. We started doing that very, very quickly. But then there is the acceptance also has to come, and you have to, sort of look after yourself. Anyway, that was a rather long story, and that might be a long story from everybody. I'm gonna pause for a bit, and Desiree, can I ask you to share your journey?
Sure. Happy to share. Firstly, terima kasih Nori for sharing from a very vulnerable perspective. I found your sharing to be very vulnerable. Thank you for sharing very honestly. I think sharing sebegini sangat diperlukan dalam community kami. Right? To be open and to acknowledge. So thank you so much for your sharing.
Betul, not many can do that.
Kan? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Deep breath, Desiree. Over to me. So, okay, pengalaman saya rasa mungkin dari segi penerimaan berbeza sedikit dan similar as well dengan Nori. Yeah. We didn't struggle with denial lah, my family and I. Sebab anak saya is an only child dan memang dia sangat dialu-alukan. We waited 6 years for me to get pregnant. Itu cerita yang lain. How I had him. So when he was born, even bila saya mengandung, it was still surreal for me. I was like, I really am pregnant finally. After all, we did to get there. And saya tak terbaca pun all these baby books, right? What do you do when your baby is born? So, banyak benda yang I didn't expect as a first time mom. And he's an only child. Dan juga, my sibling and all my other kakaks, my cousins, they are much older than me. So, anak-anak mereka semua dah teenagers. So, the last baby I was exposed to at that time was already 10 years old. Anak kepada kakak saya, kan? So for me, I went through the motions of motherhood. Of course, with a lot of love for my child. But something in me selalu terasa macam there was something not, I don't want to say the word not quite right. Something different. Something different about my child. Dan saya very consciously cuba memberi anak saya peluang untuk mingle with other children sebab tak ada kanak-kanak lain. So I enrolled him in social play group. In my neighborhood, dikendalikan oleh seorang counselor. She's a qualified counselor. So kids, babies, I think 18 months to 2 years old, that was the age range. So saya bawa anak saya pergi sana untuk bermain, and that was the point, kan, that something tergerak dalam hati saya. I knew he was different sebab there was all these kids tengah bermain, and there was
interacting, clearly interacting, right?
And doing things together. Tapi anak saya found the furthest window he could, window yang boleh lihat di keluar. He had his napkin. Dia sangat so that's obviously a sensory thing lah. Dia suka pegang dan rub to his face his napkin. Dia duduk at the side and he had a very happy look on his face. Dia sangat-sangat happy walaupun there's this bunch of kids playing. He was completely happy looking out the window. So saya pun tergerak hati. I went to the counselor. I said, and that was I think the second or third time yang kita pergi for that play group. I tanya dia, do you think anak saya ni dia lain sikit ke? And she just smiled and nodded. Sebab dia memang lebih exposure to all types of kanak-kanak. And she said, I think so.
Okay.
So she recommended that we go get an assessment for my son.
Okay.
And other things, of course, my son memang dia, as some would call it, had the very classic autism symptoms, such as lack of eye contact. Kadang-kadang bila panggil nama dia tak terpandang. Dia tidak suka orang yang tidak dikenali. So the minute he sees a stranger, he'll scream. Even going out on outings, susah lah. So dalam kereta dia happy sangat because adalah nursery rhymes dia, and he sits in his car seat. Tapi bila keluar to a shopping mall, he will be calm for a while. So katakanlah kita nak pergi makan, the minute makanan mak sampai, the waterworks will come for my son. Scream and cry. So that was also one of the things that was quite obvious. Then dia suka flat and spin. So we have a kipas in our living room. Rumah mana tak ada kipas kan di Malaysia ni? So dia akan berpusing keliling my hall. Dia tak rasa pening pun, tapi he did it in such a joyful and happy way. So saya pun macam tak tergerak hati to say, no, stop, don't do it. He's not hurting anyone. He's not hurting himself, right? But at that point, so I brought it up to my husband. Say, hey, maybe anak kita ni lain sikit. Let's go and get a diagnosis. So, kami sangat bertuah. We got into the government hospital system dalam 4 bulan. With the referral letter, saya bawa ke hospital. Dalam 4 bulan, kita dapat appointment to do a proper assessment and diagnosis with a developmental pediatrician. Dan dalam masa 2 jam, seperti Nori kata tadi, banyaklah soalan yang ditanya. And this is something I always tell parents bila pergi for this kind of assessment, tolonglah jawab dengan secara jujur.
Yes.
Dan kalau tidak tahu, jangan rasa malu, like, oh my God, I don't know. It's okay. We don't know every single thing. So that's why it's good to go as a pair, husband and wife, if that's possible. So benda yang saya tak tahu, my husband knew, and vice versa. And so within that 2 hours also, doctor looked at us and said, I'm sure this is not what you wanted to hear, But I have to tell you, your son is autistic. He has level 2 autism, challenges with social communication and speech delay. Right? So for me, I went into overdrive. My mind started thinking like what Nori shared earlier pun, what should I do? So my first question to the doctor is, what can I do? Kan, apakah resources yang tersedia for me to educate myself on how to help my child? So anyway, there's a much longer story there, tapi I would also like Didi and Anit to share. I guess my point is the penerimaan diagnosis for me as well was not a challenge sebab memanglah I knew he was different, and cara the way he was different was very joyful. It wasn't something that was like for me to be sad or upset about.
At that point in time, it was just, okay, he's different.
Yeah,
right?
he's different.
Belum tahu lagi lah what different means.
Correct.
Okay.
And so it was actually a bit of a relief that, okay, so we know it's autism. What next?
Yeah.
Right? So that was to the point until we got the diagnosis. Then of course, after that came all the learning, and we had other challenges as well. So memang masa yang saya ada untuk process everything, and from processing to intervention was very short. So within 1 month, we already started occupational therapy. And also because we had other challenges, like for example, my husband was also diagnosed with cancer 2 months after that. So, cabaran yang lain telah termasuk in this whole context. So we just went and did what we could, with whatever information we had. So saya akan berhenti setakat sini dan maybe pass it back to Nori.
Yeah. Thank you, Desiree. Yeah, a lot happens, right?
Yes.
But also a bit younger. Pada masa tu Hans berumur
2 tahun.
2 tahun.
So dia baru masuk 2 tahun. So in fact bila saya notice the ciri-ciri, dia baru saja masuk about 1.5 years, 15 months. So by the time kita dapat appointment in the government hospital, he had just turned 2. So birthday dia Julai, assessment kita dapat bulan 8. Okay. So genap-genap 2 tahun.
So I know, Anit, that for your son, it was a bit later than that, right?
Yes, a lot later, tapi bulan 8 juga. Strangely, August.
Okay, silakan cerita to us, please.
So, actually with Nirav, so dia anak sulung saya, dan I had no experience of being a parent. First timer kan? So macam, you accept your child because it's just your child, and you accept it, and actually he didn't show any signs till he was probably 3. He started a play school when he was 2.5, and he had all the basic language. He had the hand-eye coordination. He would even have good looking and eye contact, but he was selective.
So early developmental milestones too, like us,
Yes,
was met lah.
everything.
Tak ada big red flag lah.
No, everything was a big tick.
Okay.
And when
Sehingga umur 3 tahun.
sehingga umur 3 tahun, and we actually wondered because when he was about 2 years old, he became a abang. He had a younger sibling, and he didn't take to that very well. So I remember when I was tengah berpantang, and I was feeding the baby, and my husband was with me, and we were attending to the baby. My sister pointed out that Nirav stood at the side watching and very unhappy, and he walked away. So we even put it down to some form of adjustment and potential jealousy, because before that he was the first grandchild on my side, and he came 7 weeks after my dad passed away. So he brought a lot of joy to the family. So, from that whole process of grieving the loss of a parent, you suddenly had a little one that needed attention. And so there was a lot of attention showered on him.
Yeah.
So we put it down to a lot of that.
Yeah.
But then he joined school just after he became abang. And mula-mulanya tak ada masalah langsung. When I was in school with him, memang tak ada masalah. Oh, he'll be fine. Nak siap pergi sekolah tak ada masalah. You know, the normal crying for a few days, 2-3 weeks because 2+ kan. But other than that, nothing. Until he was 3+, and I think he was about 3.5 when the teacher said, he's having some problems in school. So when we asked what the problems were, they seemed to be something that we could resolve by ourselves. But then you have a mother's gut and you have a second one already, and you see the milestones being different, and you're thinking, is there something? So I first broached it with our general pediatrician, and he said to me, change the school. Huh? Tukar sekolah? Alamak. You're like, okay, I've just got my rhythm back. I'm a young mom of 2 and I'm trying to balance work. And
So seolah-olah doktor tu kata, oh tak ada apa going on with your son. Sekolah is the problem. Tukarlah sekolah.
Tukarlah sekolah. So macam tu, alamak.
And dia tak minta untuk berjumpa dengan Niraf pun pada masa tu?
Dia
chat
memang
with you?
had been speaking, had been following up with Niraf for all our vaccinations and everything. So he had been monitoring Niraf since he was a baby.
Okay.
And so you don't blame him, because for him, he would test him. Niraf would respond to him as a doctor, and really, probably he didn't see anything wrong. And I, for someone who saw him for a short period, untuk appointment vaksinasi, and this boy was ticking all the milestones, the chart, in fact, going above the chart. He was fine. So when he turned 4, actually, that's when the urge in me just got worse. My family members didn't see it, but for me, it was just like, there's something not right. There's something not right, and I need to do more. And just after that, I took my first trip to the Golden Temple in Amritsar, and I was with my late mom and my cousin. And all the way there, I kept talking to them about something's wrong with Niraf, and they had, we were on a trip, and they're like, chill, you'll be fine. Don't worry. At the end of that trip, I remember, because we flew to Delhi, and then we went to watch, strangely, the latest movie then was My Name is Khan. And at the end of that movie, I sat there, and the next morning at breakfast, I looked at them and said, do you think Niraf has Asperger's syndrome? Because that movie was about Asperger's. Both looked at me and went, huh? And then my cousin said, we're going to go back. You fix an appointment, get an assessment, don't judge. I said, okay. Because by that time, at the age of 4, he was not speaking as fluently as his younger brother. And I think that was probably my only clue. And so we came back and fixed an appointment, and we got that was in February, and appointment bulan 8. So masuk appointment, and masa tengah fill up the form tu, I rasa macam banyak benda yang I dah lupa, including what my pregnancy was like, because I'd been through 2. And then I even forgot that masa pregnancy, I had a pre-eclampsia. And I was like, oh, ya ke? Then as a mom, you start thinking, did I not do anything right? And when filling up the form, I can sincerely say that guilt, that mom guilt, actually comes across very strongly, because you kena jawab soalan secara terperinci, and then kadang-kadang lupa, kadang-kadang you fikir, hey,
definitely,
adakah saya tak buat something yang sepatutnya saya buat?
Yes,
exactly. And that I remember that feeling being overwhelming. But at the end of that session, the developmental pediatrician looked at me and said, have you heard of Asperger's syndrome? And I sat back, numb, but I just looked up, because for me, it was the result of that trip 6 months ago, which had given me the first clue, and almost precisely by making me watch a movie at the end of the trip that gave me that word, because otherwise I wouldn't have known. Yep. And I went, yes. And so she said, yeah, it's social skills that are lacking. Let's do something about it. And like Nori and like Desiree, I got into action mode. Whereas I think the rest of the family needed time to accept. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's normal in every other way. Some wanted to go and read. Older members in the family were like, huh? What's that? And it was all a process. So for a while, I was on a different trajectory with the rest of the family because I was just like, let's go. Jom buat ni, jom buat tu, jom buat ni. Oh, ada apa ni? Started going through the list yang dibagi, mana OT yang sesuai, mana speech therapist yang sesuai. Tengah fikir, adakah sekolah yang dia sedang hadir sekarang tu memang bagus untuk dia. And then balancing some other, are changes good? So you went through all that, but then step by step, I think it got there with everybody, but at different stages.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we definitely want to hear more about that. But
Yes.
we're going to listen to Didi, who's
first.
got, in a way, two stories together. I don't know how you're going to tie that together, but yes, I think we're looking forward to hearing from you, Didi. Also because you have daughters, anak perempuan. Yeah.
Kita geng anak lelaki ya.
Dalam studio ni anak lelaki. Okay, tak apa. Of course, but that's why Didi punya story ni, sesuatu
save the
yang
best for last.
menarik. Yes, maybe we save the best for last. Silakan Didi.
Okay, thank you Nori. Saya ada 2 orang anak perempuan autistik. So generally lebih ramai anak lelaki, tapi I think these days kita pun nampak ada peningkatan diagnosis di kalangan wanita. Maksudnya kebanyakan wanita mendapat diagnosis pada usia yang lebih mungkin remaja ataupun sudah dewasa, tapi anak-anak saya mendapat diagnosis pada usia 3 tahun. Even earlier sebenarnya. So lebih kurang dengan anak-anak lelaki autistik lah awal. Saya mendapat anak pertama pada umur 28 tahun. Dan pada tahun pertama, of course, masa mengandung kita, if you guys remember, there's this thick book, what to expect when you're expecting.
Yes.
Oh, I read it.
What
I
to
have it.
expect when you're expecting. Betul, yes.
Kan? Itu kita punya kitab kan. And then and then bila kita dah dapat baby dah lahir, kita ada what to expect during the first years.
Yes.
Yeah, betul.
So,
Part 2.
memang jadi rujukan lah. So bila rujuk tu tengok perkembangan anak pertama, everything okay, rasa macam mudah, and memang daripada lepas beberapa bulan mengandung, saya mula jadi stay at home wife. Sebelum tu saya menghabiskan saya punya pengajian ijazah lah. So bila dah habis, masa tu dah kahwin, dah pregnant, okay, we just stay at home. So pregnant and dapat anak pertama, and then rasa macam this baby, my first baby, not that difficult to handle by myself. So I talk to my husband, cakap maybe we should have another one. So that macam bila anak besar sikit, then I can go back to work lah, sort of like my thinking at that time. So rasa macam first baby ni senang, tak suka dukung sangat, not so clingy, like macam dia happy je not being cuddle, tak minta dukung. So I rasa macam okay. And in fact so masa tu kan kita tak tahu autism tu apa. Memang looking back, then we realise that all these banyak sebenarnya tanda-tanda. So bila saya dah di akhir pregnancy kedua, sebab anak pertama dan kedua beza dalam 20 bulan. So masa tu dia umur 1.5 tahun, 18 bulan, I was already 7 months pregnant towards the end, right? Masa tu baru nampak the challenges lah. Nampak dia susah ditenangkan. Kemudian baru kita perasan macam lambat bercakap. Tapi of course masa tu kan kita ada je benda nak justify kita punya observation. Orang akan cakap anak pertama, tak ada kawan di rumah, so that's why dia ada delay lah speechless sikit sebab tak ada siapa kan kat rumah. Dia tak ada kawan, tak ada adik-beradik lain. So okay, tak rasa macam tu. Kemudian bila adik dia lahir, still kita nampak dia anak pertama saya, dia tak boleh berkomunikasi dengan perkataan verbally, Tapi bila adik dia lahir, dia dah masuk umur 20 bulan, 20, dia dah mula kenal huruf. Dia kenal huruf macam anak Nori, so they call it hyperlexia. So dia hyperlexic, dia kenal huruf, dia kenal warna, and bila dia masuk umur 2 tahun je, dia dah kenal banyak sangat words tau. Dia dah boleh baca banyak words yang dia kenal, dia boleh baca. So sebagai first time parents kan, masa tu kita tak rasa itu satu kekurangan.
Kekurangan.
Sebab boleh baca kan. Of course
In fact,
you feel
kelebihan
very proud lah, macam kan.
Yeah.
Like kita rasa macam anak kita ni genius ni, boleh baca as such.
Happy
words kan. Lepas tu bila dia dah umur 2 tahun setengah, masih lagi macam tu. Saya fikir macam dia boleh sebut perkataan, kita tunjuk perkataan dia boleh sebut, tapi bila nak susu dia menangis. So macam mama daddy langsung tak boleh tahu. She couldn't even call me mama at that time. So that was like very weird kan. So what I did at that time, saya ada kawan yang ada buka tadika. Jadi dan ada juga bekas lecturer saya masa saya universiti yang juga buka tadika lah. So saya ada 2 orang pengusaha tadika. Saya hantar message through Facebook kan, dia cakap lah, I know you guys ada experience dengan budak-budak kan, budak-budak daripada umur 2 tahun ke atas sampai umur 6 tahun. Okay, can you help me? Anak saya umur 2 tahun setengah, this is what is happening. She can read but she cannot communicate. So what do you think? Is it okay? Is it normal? Should I do something? And both of them, because I know them separately, they don't know each other kan. Both of them replied to me and say that I think you need to bring her to be assessed, okay, to get assessment lah. So of course we made appointment, but that's the thing. We made appointment with this neurology pediatrician, pediatrician. So she's like subspecialty in neurology, you know.
Pediatric neurologist.
Pediatric neurologist, exactly.
Pediatric neurologist.
Kita pergi and then bawa assessment. Walaupun sebenarnya sebelum tu kita memang dah ada kita punya own pediatrician yang kita dah biasa. But then I thought like macam being me nak specific apa semua. So okay lah, we made another appointment and then get her assessed. Of course, somehow the appointment didn't go. Of course, we didn't expect it to be pleasant, but it was so difficult for us in a way because the way the doctor cakap tu macam blaming us the parents, like we did something wrong. So we were like macam did we made her to have autism, you know. So but funnily because it was a back-to-back appointment, so we brought the two of them to the pediatrician. I think at that time the adik need a jab or something. So we told our normal pediatrician lah. We said, we just went to see the other pediatrician. I think just to be assessed because we think that she may be autistic. And the pediatrician funnily said, what you know? He said, "Alah, tengok pun dah tahu." So I was like, you seen them like for every jab.
Wow, thanks for sharing.
I was like, so and. Yeah. Tengok pun dah tahu. So it was obvious for him, but he didn't tell us. So and then I remember because of course after that he gave a referral for therapy, right? Like they need at that time kakak needed to get started on therapy. So I asked him, what if we didn't go for any therapy? See, like my naivety, like macam kalau tak pergi terapi macam mana? What will happen? And then he said, kalau tak pergi terapi nanti cannot hold a job, nanti jadi degil. That's his word. So I was like, okay lah, dah dia cakap macam tu, kena hantar lah start pergi terapi. But definitely it was not easy because I had to handle, at the moment kakak was turning 3 years old and the adik was 1 year plus. So it was a struggle lah, of course, handling masa tu dua-dua still lasak. And I would always say that those are the period where if I lepas tangan any of them, they would just berlalu pergi tanpa kembali, you know. That I needed to really chase them kan. Because memang macam masa tu rasa kan it was definitely grief, And I remember the first night after we came back from the day we got the diagnosis for kakak, I recalled lah, of course, recall what did I do wrong? Did I eat something when I was pregnant, like something not right? And then of course, like being Muslim, people would say that, oh, is it something that I did as a person, you know? So those really,
Because ada konsep kenan dalam
yeah,
masyarakat Melayu
kenan,
ni
and
kan.
also the
Maknanya
insult
it
is
was your fault
balasan,
perkataan
you know,
kenan
like
ni.
is it something that I did wrong? So it was really hard. And then also this is something that I always say, it's it's not easy for me to say, but the hardest feeling was I felt that it was like the death of my dream child. You know, like people never think of it like a loss, but it was really like a loss for me because kind when you have a baby, you have this dream, you know, like your angan-angan, what do you yeah, how
Aspirations.
you vision your anak would be nanti pergi sekolah macam mana, what will they become, and then like not like typical Asian where like you expect like mesti jadi doctor, lawyer, not like that, but of course successful person, right?
No, but it's a daughter. Maybe like a mini me,
Yeah.
right? And
So
two mini me's
so
and so many things. So of course, these are
the
natural.
pain,
Yeah.
uh of course not so long because like you guys also, we got right into action, and we were quite fortunate where our therapy was subsidized by my husband's company. So we got that covered. So it was really hard when we went to therapy, like every day. There was time like six days a week, like only one day off, and then there were time that pagi sekolah, petang pergi swimming, malam I hantar taekwondo. There was like that three sessions per day tu, like for a while lah, until like I'm macam no, I couldn't do this, and then having another child also getting the same diagnosis, that was like lagi simple, like not even a session, not even a proper assessment. Kakak got admitted for fever. Doctor saw adik playing iPad and he said, start her on the therapy. I think she's autistic too. Just like that. Same doctor.
Same doctor.
I think, I don't know, but save money on assessment, but still, I mean, like, but of course after that we did make a proper assessment. I think this with developmental pediatrician, this doctor using DSM-5, where it took 2 hours for each child to be assessed, right? And yeah, and it was still the same result lah. Like yang tengok saja, and also proper assessment still came out with autism as the diagnosis. And of course this apa this sedih, this denial, this bargaining where kita rasa macam, what did I do wrong? Why am I the only one having child like this? Orang lain ada perfect child yang tak ada apa-apa masalah. So I think those feeling come and go. It's not like macam one way. One you dah go through sadness, go through anger, go and everything like macam okay je. So there are times macam especially bila certain, how to say, certain stages kan, macam for example like 12-year-old, anak orang lain ambil ipesa, anak kita tak ada. So that kind of sadness lah, the pang of rasa not left behind, but there's a deep lah in your heart kan, you rasa macam not my child. But the acceptance, the level of acceptance, the kind of acceptance also changes, evolve in a way that when they were little and we were sending them to therapy like day in day out, we were into fixing mode, you know. We have this vision that if we send them through therapy and proper education, I mean the specialized education, they might close the gap and they can attend I mean sekolah biasa,
Sekolah
mainstream,
biasa.
and that's it. We autism would be a history for us. Until kita faham that no, it's not just lifelong. It's the struggle also changes. The challenges are different, and it's not just for us to. No, it's not just. We cannot fix them. we equip them with skills, and the way they learn also different. That's why we need the therapy, so that they learn things that they should have um, through, I mean, like different means lah, like through therapy. Kalau orang lain mungkin, you know how we have social skills, it's not just inbuilt, we absorb it, we learn it from observation. But for them, for my children, they have to learn it explicitly, right? So they and even that, yeah, step by step, and it has to be spelled out in a different way, not the way that we have learned it, you know. So the acceptance, the sadness, the anger, it comes and go, but knowing that it's okay to feel whatever you feel, but like process it, like by talking to my husband, talking to you guys, talking to other parents that also go through the same thing. Those really help lah, because um it's not macam, this is not a problem where like we sit down and it can be settled in a day, you know. The challenges, the thing yang macam kita rasa kita dah okay, when it hit you again, you're like macam, man, like, kan, it still hurt. And you know, I just want to share this. I had this kind of interview. I had an interview with someone on this topic, and I said like all this that I said just now about how I felt, my grief. And 2 days after that, my daughter, the kakak, came to me and said, "Mama, I know I'm not the daughter that you were hoping for." I was like, "How did you know?" I did not say it to her. It's not that within her earshot, but she can feel it. So I macam everything, whatever I feel, even like now, by recollecting all the memories, right, all the experience, I really need to process it quickly. So once I get out of this room, I will not have these lingering thoughts like memories, because it's very important lah, the acceptance. We macam so much of, kan, we talk about anger, we talk about sadness. They are our children who we need to cherish, we need to love, if not more than typical kids, right? Has to be like,
But you know what is kind of beautiful to me, Didi? Like, hearing your journey again, Suma, but look at how far you've come. How far have we all come? So I think that's the other thing that we, and we'll hope to share more, but it's just that you can start from there, and that is where you are, and those are expected, and you should go through all those feelings. But look how many years later, like, we couldn't be prouder of our kids. They're like this blessing now, the people that have come to try to make us better people. So, and then we're going to talk about that, right? And journey and some other stuff. And that was a lot to unpack. So let's take a little break. And actually think about where you are today. And that's how I want you to also process those difficult moments, right? We'll be right back. Hi, ladies. We are back on a very, very personal episode of Kita Family Podcast, menceritakan tentang pengalaman pribadi masing-masing pada momen dan pada masa di mana kita mendapat berita tentang anak-anak kita. Ya, anak-anak kita yang telah didiagnosis dengan autism. That's something that happened to all four of us, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a big one. And I think we gave ourselves a little bit of extra time to sort of share what had in fact happened. Because sebenarnya, and this is something I am going to throw to you, Didi, because at the break, we were talking about mungkin sekarang ni ramai menganggap kita adalah ibu-ibu yang sangat positif and everything is great. And of course, nak buat podcast macam ni kan, untuk menjemput semua orang, untuk mengalu-alukan anak-anak kami yang neurodivergent, membina satu community yang inklusif. But of course now we know that it's a long journey, tak selalu mula begitu. If I can invite you to talk a little bit more about that, Didi, we're going to each take a turn and see what we want to share because of our journey, right? On the subject of, accepting. How do you receive this news? Go ahead, Didi.
Well, of course, orang nampak kita positif, nampak kita boleh senyum, ada masa nak buat podcast. Oh, you must be on top of things. Anak kita semua okay. Memang anak kita okay. There are a lot of things that kita celebrate about anak-anak kita. All the achievements, apa yang dia boleh buat. Kita punya rasa syukur tu, of course, every day there are things yang kita rasa syukur. Tapi masih ada masa-masa yang kita punya hati kan sebagai ibu still tersentuh, still rasa ada hari-hari yang sukar. Kita not just pada kita, tapi bila kita ingatkan cabaran yang anak-anak kita hadapi kan, kita rasa macam such a hard life kan for them. Tak macam orang lain kan, dia punya struggle, dia punya apa. I just want other parents to know that the feelings come and go. It's not every day all rosy. Ada hari-hari masih lagi ada cabaran-cabaran. And it's important for us to recognize the feelings. And pada kita suami isteri kan, recognize each other's feelings. Kalau isteri rasa down, the husband may do something. If the husband is feeling down, we recognize each other's feelings and where we are in the stages of grief or at whenever we face challenges kan. So you guys yang mungkin baru anak-anak baru dapat diagnosis ataupun diri sendiri dapat diagnosis, you guys are not alone. Ramai lagi yang menghadapi cabaran yang sama. So I hope everybody get into the right circle, make new friendships, be in the community support group, so that we get strength from each other, insyaAllah. Back to you, Nori.
Yeah. Strength from each other, and you ended with inshallah. Like I'm reminded, SK cannot be with us, and she wanted to mention to be able to talk about faith.
Yes.
Having faith in whatever form, in your own form, your belief system, your religion, combination of that faith and gratitude helps a lot. Because it gives you that confidence, it gives you the strength to get up for another day, to keep going, to remember, especially on the super, super difficult days, to count your blessings, right? To be able to count your blessings. Anit, you had something to share about what you feel you'd like to other parents or other families to know, right? When they're going through something like this.
Yes, thanks, Nori. And I'd like to take the faith topic a little bit further. For me, personally, I think my faith strengthened because I felt that, oh my God, when I doa secara sincere, memang there is an answer. So that became a strength for me because just 6 months earlier, I was at my Mecca and I asked for direction and I was given the direction. So for me, that became a personal story, and I actually believe that for all of you going through it, there is a personal journey and you just need to keep going. We may all seem to be all with it at the moment, but we all have our moments of weakness. We all need to find a support system. We need to rely on each other, and we just keep going because each day will bring either a lesson or a celebration.
Both are good.
Both are good, and both teach you so much. So when you take it that way, and one day you look back, and you be like, "Huh? Oh my God, we've come so far. Trust me, you'll get there." But the key is jangan mengalah dan keep going. And I'd like to just share this one thing. In the course of all this, I think I also met through Nori, Kak Felina, who was then the president of NASOM.
Chairman of NASOM.
Chairman
of
the
National Autism Society of Malaysia.
Amazing woman. So full of courage and so positive. And when COVID hit, she was one of those who was volunteering in the OKU vaccination center kat arah Damansara. So satu hari tu I cakap, Kak Felina, I pun nak volunteer lah. Okay, jom. I remember that day sebab hari tu Hari Raya Haji. So I tak kerja. So I boleh volunteer. Okay. That one day of me volunteering, saya balik and saya bersyukur, saya sujud, saya berdoa dan sangat bersyukur. Because hari tu saya memang sedar cabaran yang saya diberi itu memang sangat kecil compared to ramai lagi yang mempunyai cabaran yang lebih besar. Dan you suddenly realise there's more people with worse things out there and they keep going too. So keep going. Find your support group, as Didi said, and step by step, we all get there.
Keep going.
Yep.
Yeah.
We got to move it.
Humor helps.
It does.
So
At all times.
yes,
And our
sekali-sekala
kids-
kena ketawa.
Yeah,
dalam
and our
sedih
kids enjoy
pun.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
Betul,
enjoy
betul.
music and they enjoy humor.
Yeah, it's true. Coping. Desiree,
Yeah.
let's hear from our youngest. Sometimes has the most wisdom.
Yes.
What do you have to share?
No, I suddenly feel so pressured.
Pressure. Macam lah you tak biasa dengan pressure. Cik.
I try.
Okay, silakan.
So yeah, definitely find the laughter, right? And I like
yeah.
what Anit said. We must find humorous moments. I mean, yeah, everyone has challenges. Firstly, I want to acknowledge that everyone has challenges, no matter who you are, what you do. Everyone has challenges. I think that's very important to acknowledge, and that is something that actually unites everybody. We all have challenges, regardless of our abilities, right? But if there's something I could share with parents who are maybe new to this or seeking a diagnosis, my personal journey, acceptance of the autism diagnosis, to me wasn't an issue. What I found really hard to accept were people's reactions. Some were good, of course, that was great. The ones who reacted well, lovingly, supportingly, I'm very grateful for that. Most of my immediate family, I'm very blessed that they reacted that way. But I had some very cruel reactions as well. And for example, a general practitioner, a GP, that I went to see for a stomachache, asked me what I was stressed about. And I told her, my son's just diagnosed with autism. We're looking for centers. She didn't even let me finish what I was saying. She's like, it's your fault. Your son is autistic. She looked me in the eye and told me it was my fault. She said, you ate whatever you wanted when you were pregnant. That's why your son is autistic. And she went on further to tell me that I need to feed my child less sebab anak yang kurus and autistic better, senang nak jaga. Already I had a child who's a picky eater who only ate certain things, even, tantamount to telling me to starve my kid. While in that moment, I felt an immense sense of shame that, oh my God, I did this to my son. But at the same time, like I shared earlier, I never viewed my son's autism or difference as something that was bad. He was joyful. Of course, we had the meltdowns and the tantrums, but 80% of the time, he was a happy kid.
Yeah.
And so it's, in a way, thanks to this doctor, I guess, maybe that's why I'm sitting here. I went out there to educate myself so that the next time someone told me that, regardless what their paper qualifications were, I could say, no, you're wrong. I did not cause my son's autism. And even if I did, so what? This is the hand of fate that I have been dealt with.
Yeah. You
Right?
didn't do it on purpose.
I didn't do it on purpose. I love my child. And my child loves me, I know. He can't say it, but he does. Right?
Of course
So,
he does.
Of course. It's so clear.
Yes.
It's so clear.
He adores you. He just doesn't love you. Okay.
He has to. He has no choice.
Betul.
Yeah.
Desiree, Nuri dah dengar cerita ni banyak kali and I get really
Angry every
upset
time.
and
Yeah.
angry. So I think I would like to be very, very clear that the science, the research, everything has shown that we still do not know what the cause
cause
of
of
autism
autism
is.
is.
Autism specifically lah,
Yes.
is until today. Yeah. So for those of you wondering, and we will always carry mom guilt. Mom guilt is part of being a mother. I think tak kisahlah anak you, whatever child you
Yeah,
have,
typical
at
ke,
whatever stage,
neurotypical.
at whatever
Yeah.
stage in your life, at some point in time, you will experience mother's guilt. When your child, something goes wrong, something is not quite right for the day, your child has done something, whatever. Even if your child is not neurodivergent, the mother guilt is very, very strong. So
Yes.
it's extra strong because, when it's a neurodivergent child, you have unexpected things going on a little bit more often. But to be absolutely clear, nobody can come and say to you that this is your fault.
Yep.
And you cause the autism, or the many of the more often diagnosis that we hear for neurodivergence like ADHD, dyslexia, is not on you. This is what has happened, and maybe this is your story or your journey if you are a person of faith and you consider fate or takdir and things like that. But it's not because of something very specific that you did. So for anybody to do this was very, very unkind, and I'm quite terkejut that, again, terkejut, like, didn't even ask you what is your child's diet, what do you feed your child, what's going on, some other things, and to just be so dismissive like that is not, is, I don't know. I'm gonna flip it to something more positive to say, in order that we don't see those situations. That's amongst the reasons that we are here together.
Absolutely.
Kita tahu dalam keadaan di mana kita baru menerima berita sebegini, dan kita tahu inilah sekarang rancangan hidup kita, semua dah berubah, perjalanan hidup kita akan berubah. Cerita family kita pun akan berubah pada masa itu. Kalaulah ada sesiapa di sekeliling yang tidak tahu bagaimana untuk bersipati ke, ataupun nak
Support ke.
nak bagi sokongan and all that. I think actually, though, first of all, I think, so if you're hearing the news, let's say you are an extended family member of a friend and it's shocking to you, you're not sure what to say at that point, the best thing is, first, maybe don't say anything yet.
Yes.
Okay?
Yep.
Just be there to listen and wait. Just listen. Okay? Secondly, try to find out more. Okay? Educate yourself, or try to at least ask questions. Put on the lens of curiosity. I know the shock is there. I know maybe you're quite upset. And also it depends on how you feel, or what are your thoughts. What is the experience that you have, the knowledge you have, maybe some baggage that you have, that you carry about people with intellectual or mental conditions, or people with disabilities. This is all going to end up adding on to when you receive the news, right? Which is why, of course, we want more people to be more aware that this is, this is different. This is a state of being human. Yes, it's challenging, but the humanity is there. This is still a person. So many things to celebrate. But everything is going to be part of you when you receive this kind of news. Now, if what you have is not so positive, please try to remember that the person passing on this news is the one sebenarnya yang terkesan, is the one that is affected. So it's not about you, by the way.
Yeah.
So if you can at least go, okay, let me just listen, and and if you can ask the right questions, take the lead from how the person is telling you. I have found that when I share, as a matter of fact, that my son is autistic, and I just it's just describing, like, for example, he's 5 years old, he's 10, he goes to this school, he's doing this, he's autistic. Then the other person has to also go, oh wait, the tone of that was very
Matter of fact.
sebagai dia cuma cerita sebagai maklumat. So tak ada pun ada saya bersedia, tak ada macam saya kata anak saya 3 orang tapi seorang tu tahulah dia I've come to they are going to take also the lead from you. So that is again the person telling the story. So back to the person yang mendengar, right? If you're not sure, I mean, a few days ago, I think it was last week, we talked about power of the pause.
Yes.
If you're not sure, please pause.
Pause.
At least to be considerate of orang yang, you know, tiba rasa sikit lah. Sabarlah dulu. Fikirkanlah tentang orang yang menyampaikan cerita ni pada kita. Dan sedang memberitahu sesuatu yang agak besar. Ini sesuatu yang telah berubah keseluruhan hidup dia. Mungkin kita juga akan terkesan kalau kita sebagai ahli keluarga, kawan and all this. And actually what we hope is that you will play the supportive role, right? But if you're not ready to do that, and everybody has these stages. So bukan sahaja mak bapak kepada seorang anak yang mendengar dan, you know, menerima benda ni. Kita tahu orang lain pun mungkin juga akan terkesan. It's okay. You also need a little bit of time. But pause. Please pause. Wait. And if you don't have anything good or positive or anything to say at that point in time, I think it's okay for you to say, wow, that is very big news. Kan? Macam saya tak expect pun nak dapat berita macam ni. Dan saya sebenarnya tak tahu. Tak tahu dan perlu fikirkan sekejap. Perlu nak proses dulu. And that would be better.
Yes.
You know, that would be better than, you know, immediately like, you know, trying to do something. It's okay. It's okay. And we don't immediately expect semua orang yang kita cerita tu like, you know, to have all the solution to help us to jump on board. Of course, that would be wonderful. And once we create a more aware and inclusive community, inshallah, you know, God willing, the responses will be better, more positive, and people will say, what do you need? You know, how can I help you?
Yeah.
How are you feeling? Are you okay? Are you all right? I'm just, you know, just want to check on you. Is that, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, things are under control. Let me know how I can help. So this is, of course, the best things to be able to hear, right? That somebody is just checking on you. So it's just it's as simple as other unexpected news, you know, so you can, of course, take that stand. But if you're also not ready to do that, please, 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 this is not the time to start. What? What do you mean? Or, you know, if somebody comes to you at that point in time, they know already it's a fact. So for you to do this questioning and I'm not sure, you know, this be a little bit considerate lah. So I think in terms of like a tip for those getting the news, and especially if it's not direct, try to remember to be a little bit mindful of these things. You know, and that alone, right? They do no harm, or at least wait
Do no harm. Yes.
and pause. You know, this is something.
And no blame game.
Yes.
Bukan, you know, bukan kesilapan sesiapa. You know, it's just a card that's dealt to you in life.
Yes. And these things happen. We are
Yes.
dealt many different other
Cards.
types of cards,
Cards.
right? This is just, you know, again, that's
one of
another
the card.
layer. Yeah. This is a different one. This is a different one from, you know, things that have happened. So
And Nori, can I just say that bila
yeah.
saya fikir semula, especially lepas tahu diagnosis, saya sedar that semasa saya membesar, ada ramai orang yang saya jumpa yang memang suka bersenyap, tak suka social, tetapi mereka tak ada diagnosis. Tapi kalau saya analisis semula, had there been more awareness, mungkin mereka pun mempunyai diagnosis yang sama. But they have just grown up and dealt with life because masa tu tak ada awareness sangat.
You know, that thought has crossed my mind too. I remember people I went to school with, and now when I'm thinking back, I'm actually a bit upset because they didn't get the support that they needed.
Exactly.
Maybe if they got the support they needed, tak adalah diorang masuk yang kelas yang terakhir, yang terbawah. Itu pada masa sistem persekolahan kita belum progresif sikit lagi dan kita dah cepat-cepat sangat nak stream the children semualah. You know, at that time it was like so unfortunate actually. They were not well understood, so they didn't get that kind of support, right? So there's so many things, and of course kita family will continue to talk about all these things, and we will be breaking down more in terms of maybe what can different people do with respect to level of acceptance. Again, we are guided by wanting to spread the 4 A's: awareness, acceptance, appreciation, and eventually, of course, we want that to lead to action, to build a better community, you know, that whole bigger village, something that supports everyone, not to leave any of our kids behind. But I think we'll say goodbye for now. And if you do, want to hear more about something specific, we're always ready to hear some feedback. But yes, this is just the beginning of that journey. And, we've hoped that there is something that you can take away from our own personal sharing of this. So, buat masa ini, saya Nori daripada Kita Family. InsyaAllah kita berjumpa lagi. Bye.
Bye.